Welcome back to Beyond Well. I'm Sheila Hamilton, and this is a program for people who want to learn more about our interior lives. And I'm so grateful for the support of Active Recovery TMS. They're a group of one of the most dedicated teams of health caregivers in the Northwest, offering transcranial magnetic stimulation, ketamine-assisted therapy, and counseling to help people who are suffering from anxiety and depression. Active Recovery is expanding into Seattle this December, and you can find an office anywhere in the Northwest near you, because shouldn't mental health care be just as easy and accessible as physical health care? Yes. So our guest today was born and raised in Portland, and she was intrigued by the connection of music and personal style from an early age. She was always a person who dressed up, always had a hairbrush in her hand to be singing in front of a mirror and starring in self-produced concerts. She would go on to become one of our favorite designers, dressing singer Norah Jones, Jennifer Aniston, Sheryl Crow, Faith Hill, the list goes on, but mostly she is my dear friend, Michelle DeCourcy. Hello, Michelle. It's so good to have you on this show. I can't even tell you how great it is to finally have you as a guest.
I'm so happy to be here. It's about time.
Yeah, isn't it? So I want to ask you, and I don't want to surprise you with this question, but I'm wondering if you remember how we met.
We met, well, I think we met, but not officially in fitness class, in spin class. But I think we officially met in my store.
Mm-hmm.
You came in and you were perusing the racks. And I said, you look familiar. And you said, well, probably because I wear her stuff all of the time. And I was like, well, I'm her. It's nice to meet you.
Hello, I'm her.
We ran in a couple of similar circles, but had never really made that connection.
It was so incredible how when you meet someone and you just know from the minute you meet them that you're going to be fast friends. Like they say that, love isn't instantaneous. I don't believe that with friendship. I think you can meet someone and know immediately that you want to know more about them.
I agree. I do. I think you can meet someone and know, you may not know if it will happen, but I think you will know whether or not you want them to stay in your life beyond the meeting.
So in order to set up the transformation that you've recently made, I want to go back to an early memory. And this was after our kids became good friends and we were neighbors. So we spent a ton of time together. Remind people about what was happening when we were packing to go on a boating trip to Idaho. Take us back.
So it was 2007, and we were going to go to Idaho with our girls and spend a wonderful last leg of summer with them before they went back to school, hanging out at the lake and hiking and doing all the fun things. And I had been in Idaho at my house, came home, and there was an in-between period. I had developed some hip pain that was pretty significant, and it started in Idaho. And I thought it was, had to do with all the running I had done over the years, and went to a doctor when I got back because the hip pain hadn't gone away, and was diagnosed with ALL, which is acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I was 35 years old. The day that I was diagnosed in 2007, I was put immediately into the oncology floor at Providence St. Vincent's and started a year's worth of aggressive chemotherapy and treatment for cancer.
And it was a year. It was a year of your life of battling, sometimes to the point where we didn't know if you were going to survive. And I want to talk to you about the changes that occurred in you during that year.
Mm-hmm. Besides the physical changes of going through a health crisis and some of those struggles, I think in terms of just really understanding it, I think we're fast forwarding now. So I've been in full remission for 16 years. And so, sort of piecing back together, like how that started at that moment. But I know, so a lot of it will be filled in, a lot of those blanks are filled in with the life that I've lived from then until now, and have really been able to work through and understand. But I think that when you go through something like facing your own mortality, you obviously look at life differently, and you realize that we don't get any days back, and you truly have to live each day and live it in the moment. And I believed that, and I did make some of the necessary adjustments with my career and with family, and brought myself back to health, and had to work really, really hard to get there and to realize that I'd been denying a big part of myself that ultimately has a lot to do with, I think, why we get ill and why we develop a lot of systemic disease. Now that I'm looking back on all of that, I also see how easy it is to go through periods in life where we slip in and out of that reality and like what's best for us. And it's because we're supposed to, because we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to grow and we're supposed to go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I think what it did give me was some extra wisdom at a younger age than I would have received otherwise.
Yeah. You've been, as a kind of mentor to me, one of the people who makes the most deliberate decisions about your life of anyone that I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
You, at the time after you were in remission, decided to close your stores, decided to completely change your business the way that you were doing, which was incredibly successful, and to also move more back into your music, which you are such a gifted singer songwriter that
Thank
I've
you.
always been in awe of you, that it seems clearer to you. And I wonder if you've ever thought of cancer as that kind of gift for you, that you have this unique clarity that's like, no, I need to do this and I know I need to do it now.
Yeah, I think it helped. Just like every experience that we have in life makes us closer to who and what we are, and hopefully. And I think that I had a pretty non-traditional childhood, and so my upbringing was a series of change, and not always good change.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was good, but sometimes it wasn't good at all. And so you go through life like that, learning how to develop a persona so that you can survive and you can get to the next thing and the next thing. And then if you're not careful, I think that one day with success, and the worst advice I've ever received from anyone was strike while the iron is hot.
Mm,
I think is just terrible advice to give someone when they start to see success, whether it be, in anything, in a career and, relationship and love, because I think it gives you the impression that you have this finite amount of time to make and achieve goals. Having cancer certainly was a gift in many ways. That's a long way of answering the question. Yes, I wouldn't change anything if I had to do it over again. But I also think that illness or not, we have red flags in our life. Our gut, might tell us something, our intuition, our health, because you can fake your way through life relatively easy
mm,
and not listen to your inner voice. But at a certain point, you have to stop sleepwalking
mm.
through that part of yourself, and you have to pay attention, because the red flags, the information that you need, it is always there for you, and it's abundant.
You've sort of set up the transition into the state that you found yourself in this year, where you were beginning to feel a lot of those nagging health concerns that made you realize this is a red flag I need to pay attention to. So, bring me up to date with how you started focusing on your breast implants as a potential source of the ill health in your body.
Mm-hmm. So over the last several years, I had a breast augmentation 20 years ago, and they were, as far as I, understood in the information given and research that I had done, you had apparent risks going under the knife, surgery, anesthesia. There's always going to be risks, but at any point was it ever brought to my attention that they could cause autoimmune disorders, that they could cause chronic fatigue, that they could cause joint pain? There's many things that breast implant illness can cause, but there's not a definitive diagnosis for it. Each year, something new, would crop up: the joint pain, the muscle pain, the chronic fatigue, the memory fog.
Mm,
All of those things I chalked up to, well, 15 years ago, I did have a pretty aggressive chemo regime. So that's probably just some of the after effects that I'll be dealing with some of these things forever. And there's always a reason,
yeah.
chronic fatigue, increased anxiety and depression, two things that I've dealt with my entire life, had really hit
Wow.
an all-time high over the last few years. And it's very easy to say again, oh, it's COVID. It's just
Yeah.
everything, that we're going through. It's the world today. But once I dug deeper and started to explore, because I was at a point where knew I needed to either have them replaced, or I needed to have them removed.
Mm,
And the groups that are assembling out there, the Facebook groups, there was one in particular, it's called Breast Implant Illness, Awareness, group. It's like a support group.
okay.
And there are several women who had these complaints, and they were all of the symptoms that I've had over the years. It was, the numbness in the arm, the tingling, the joint pain, the fatigue. just chronic bronchitis, things like illnesses that just, I couldn't quite recover from. I was diagnosed celiac.
Mm,
Again, I thought it was the trauma of my earlier diagnosis,
wow.
hair loss, headaches, you name it. They're all things that could be, well, that could be menopause, that could be this. But then to see that all of the women that are going through all of these unexplained things have a subset of these symptoms, if not, all of them.
Mm,
I had almost every single one of them.
wow.
Each year asking the questions, could this have anything to do with my implants? With my medical team, I have a naturopath that I see for functional medicine purposes. I have
Yeah.
a general practitioner that I see, an oncologist that I see, because scientifically, the evidence-based diagnosis that there's a test that you can take to say I have breast implant illness doesn't exist. So therefore, it must be something else.
Yeah.
So it's been an incredible journey, and I really am at the tippy top of the journey. I just completed some medical tests. I mean, we can get into that if you want, but it's some things to kind of see where I'm at with heavy metal toxicity. I need to go in and have an MRI on my liver, because not all women can have an implant, whether it's saline or silicone. They're still in a silicone casing. It's plastic, and it's in your body. And
Mm,
when those implants are put in initially, your body does what it's supposed to, and it creates a sheet around that. It's a capsule to
yeah.
protect itself, which is a good thing, because when they've been in for a long time and they cause irritation and inflammation in the body, they can cause a whole host of other diseases. Most recently, they've discovered there's a link between primarily the textured implants, whether they're saline or silicone, and a breast implant associated lymphoma.
Yeah. And so, Michelle, when you went to the plastic surgeon and had these conversations about could all of these things be happening because of this, what were you told?
Just, I want to back up, because there have been, throughout my medical journey, going to the doctor for the chronic fatigue, going to my naturopath. I'm tired all the time. I had this tingling in my arm. I went to the ER. I thought I was having a heart attack. My arm went numb.
Mm,
My hand went numb. My head felt, tingly. These are all things that, women talk about. So over the course of the years, going, from another to another, I
yeah.
always did ask the question to all of my medical team, could this have anything to do with
Yeah.
my implants? I had breast implants. At the 10-year mark, I specifically remember asking my MD, I've had these in for 10 years. Should I have them replaced? I've been reading that it's a good idea to have them replaced every 10 years. And she said, as long as they're not causing you any problems, you can keep them in forever.
Mm,
I believed her. And I have the ability, and I have a decent understanding, and I've taken a rough enough ride through the medical system that I know how to do some research. I know
mhm,
the basics. I know that there's a lot of women that don't. They're not equipped with that. And if their doctor tells them something, that they believe them.
mhm.
And they should. But the awareness isn't there. There's not a black box warning. They don't tell you all of the things that could possibly happen. They don't tell you that if you are prone to autoimmune in your DNA, if it's something that you may or may not develop, that you're not a good candidate for breast implants. They don't tell you those things. When I say they, all of my doctors, whom are all still my doctors, I think they're amazing at what they do, but there's just not enough information until there's some money put behind the research it's going to take to get somebody to actually give it a diagnosis, so that we can get off of
Yeah.
this train. I think that a lot of women are going to suffer.
I
um,
want to ask you about the deliberations that you made to actually decide to have them removed. How difficult was it being closer to middle age now, knowing that for most of your adult life, you've enjoyed the appearance of nice, full, round breasts?
mhm. Yeah. So when I had them put in, I was 30.
Yeah.
I had wanted breast since, as my earliest memory was in third grade, when a classmate started to develop early. And I thought, I want to have that. I
Mm,
just noticed that, it just looked like all of the girls in the magazines, and it looked like, everything that the Western world was taught was beautiful, and made you complete. I've always been into fitness, and with that comes a certain level of vanity and wanting to look your best.
Mm,
And that was always the missing piece. I've always been like a size A, very like, athletic build, flat chested. So it was something I'd wanted for a very, very long time. And I finally got the guts to get it done.
mm,
And I didn't regret having it done. I did always like them. I did like the way that I looked. I wasn't as concerned about how I was going to look, but I cared. I wanted to know. I knew I wasn't going to have that volume anymore. So it crossed my mind. It crossed my mind to go and have them put back in. More than crossed my mind. I was researching both alternatives. Do I have
yeah.
them replaced now? If I do, is it a one and done and I don't have to do it again? It wasn't until I had a mammogram, a routine mammogram, an ultrasound that showed some fluid that had built up between my implant and the capsule. And
Mm,
I developed capsular contracture, which is the hardening of the capsule around the implant on one side, that I went in to see the plastic surgeon and was made aware that although rare, there is a lymphoma associated with the type of implants that I had put in, that I needed to go have a needle biopsy done for this.
mm,
Once the results came in and there was no lymphoma and everything was good to go, I was told that I could have my implants replaced, and that if I had them replaced, it would be okay.
mhm.
Because why would a surgeon put implants in if they weren't good for you?
Right.
Because of this diagnosis. But it just didn't land. And I kept waking up at night. I would wake up in the morning and I would think, oh, I'll just have them replaced. Stop being a chicken. You're fine. You're overreacting. You've been through a lot. You're just,
Mm,
but I knew. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and just, there's no way I can have these replaced. And that's what prompted the research. And once I saw the potential hazards that they were causing,
mhm.
and no way of testing or knowing if that was in case the fact, there was just no doubt in my mind that I was going to have an explant. I did do some research on what I would look like afterwards. That's not always the best idea because, it looks nothing like the research I did.
Yeah.
I'm really happy. I went to a good surgeon who I also had a lift. So she removed the implant and did a lift. I'm extremely happy with the results. I'm so glad they're out of my body, and I don't miss them. I thought I would miss them a little bit. It's not bikini season, but
I want to talk to you about the almost immediate changes that you've seen both to your moods and to some of the other strange symptomology that you weren't able to pin down as to why it was happening.
mhm. Like I said earlier, the depression and the anxiety were really at an all-time high. I was just the anxiety was so bad that I was perpetually, I just felt anxious all the time. My stomach just felt really anxious. Plus there's a host of gut issues that accompany BII, which is also, part of that autoimmune response. Your body trying to rid itself of something that's not supposed to be there for you. And again, I want to say a lot of women can have this procedure done and their bodies metabolize the toxins fine and they don't have any issues.
Mm,
But women who do have these issues, they have them. And it's a lot of them end up taking a journey through a lot of different antidepressants for their
mm,
anxiety and depression.
mm.
For me personally, the big ones were those two, the anxiety and depression. And overnight, they were just better. The brain fog, I felt like a veil had been lifted, and I
Wow.
can't pinpoint that I just was getting through my emails quicker, or
Wow.
reading my news quicker. It really was just, I felt like everything seemed easier,
Wow.
and I wasn't like, why am I lost? Wait, where am I going? Things like that you just chalk up to everything in life. We're busy, we're tired. In my neck, I'd had this chronic pain in my neck for about 4 years. And then my lymph node would kind of swell, and it would hurt, and I would feel it. And, again, it's like, oh, it must have been that cold you had. They're still a little bit swollen at the doctor, that sort of thing, which I now know that part of BII is the lymphatic system, and it draining. It's really wreaks havoc on that autoimmune response. My neck pain was gone the morning after my explant, and it hasn't come back. It's just completely resolved. And I've gone to chiropractor, naturopath, massage, infrared, you
Everything.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, I mean, because I think it's really interesting, especially with autoimmune disorders, just how many decades it takes for people to get help. I'm thinking about the chronic fatigue world, now the long COVID world.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone who lives in this world is as frustrated as you were with these strange things. What's your estimation of how long it might be before the general public begins to understand the connection between these autoimmune conditions and breast implants?
Well, I think, now that, functional medicine is a really big part of this. And I think that the testing that you can get through functional medicine, because it does it's all connected, and it's,
Mhm.
cause and effect. And we have to too remember that treatment will never keep up with diagnosis. It's always going to lag. It's always going to lag, which is why our intuition is so important. And it's not really what I think, but what I know from what I've read, and what I've, educated myself on, is that some women will get symptoms right after they've had implants put in, a
Mm.
week, a month. They'll notice that these things are wrong. Then when they do have them removed, usually a lot of symptoms were resolved. So I think a lot of it is, how long have they been in? Have they been in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? There does seem to be some consistency in some of the different case studies that I've read with women who are 20 years out, like I was, versus women who were 10 years. It's not always the same. Typically, it takes time. It generally takes, I've heard, 3 months to 2 years to really get back. And there's a small percentage of women that will have them removed and they may not see significant improvement
Mm.
in their health. But for the most part, people start to see it pretty dramatic within the first 3 months.
Wow, that's incredible. So I want to have you share, especially if there's a woman who's going, oh my God, everything she said I have. What are some of the crowdsourcing places where you learned information, and where can people go to learn more information about this? Do you think there's a reliable source out there?
There's a couple of reliable sources. There's a couple of TED Talks. There's not a lot of information, but once you start digging, there's quite a bit. I found there's one TED Talk in particular that a female physician had done, and she spoke of her own journey also, and then just clinically understanding, what she had experienced. That was one of the best things for me to kind of understand what I needed to do to get my health back. Like, okay, these are the functional medicine tests that I need to have done. I need to see where my new
Yeah,
baseline is now,
right.
because you have them taken out and you don't always know what to do beforehand. Should I be prepping? Should I be doing some kind of a binder to help the detox?
Yeah.
All of that sort of thing. And the detox piece of it is very real.
Wow.
It really, really is. The best thing for women that are considering is to just to gather the facts and to retrace their steps. What I found is that every year I was going to the doctor for something new.
Mm.
Well, now I'm not sleeping. Well, it's hormones. My
Mm.
hormones are off.
Right.
Well, now it's this. So and again, there's always some other thing that you can blame this on. But I
Yeah.
think if we just can get quiet enough with ourselves to like connect with our own bodies and listen and know, I mean, our bodies will tell us when something's not right. Retracing my steps, my first flu was 4 years after I had my implants, and I had my first migraine, and it was horrific. I thought I was having a brain aneurysm. I just never experienced such a significant headache in my life. That's one of the things that it comes with, and that's something that I've dealt with for the last 20 years. I'll just, every year I'll get a couple of just very debilitating migraines. So I'll be
Migraines.
really interested to see a year from now where that's at.
Yeah. And I just want to remind people that, there's a lot of science now about the connection between the gut and the brain, and that they've seen those who have sort of inflammatory markers around their gut axis, those people tend to have higher rates of depression and anxiety. And so, of course, it's related, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
We
mm-hmm.
don't walk around disconnected from the rest of our bodies. And inflammation is such a huge contributor to all kinds of illness. It makes perfect sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. The inflammation piece is really huge, and just having the test. My inflammation, my ferritin was something that was just incredibly high, and they just couldn't figure out what was causing that. I just had everything retested, so I'm really anxious to get those results back, and just to see from where we started to where we are today.
I love talking with you because I always learn something. And it's the feeling for me that this kind of story sharing is actually the cutting edge of how we need to do that personal search in
Yeah.
ourselves for what might be next for me. I think, especially for women, if you have a hunch that it could be your breast implants, go get it checked out. Go get it checked out.
If you ever have a hunch about anything,
Yeah.
especially about your health, it's what you need to do, and everybody else around you is just practicing. But you know your body better than
Yeah.
anyone else, and if someone tells you it must be in your head, well, of course it's in your head, because it's in your gut, it's in your boobs and your stomach, and it's in your fingernails, it's in your
Yes.
hair.
Right.
It's everywhere. And I agree with you, Sheila. I think that in order to heal from anything, whether it's pain, grief, illness, it takes hearing other people's stories, and finding, if you can affect one person and tell your story and it resonates something in them that will help them, that's what it's all about.
And I know Michelle is the kind of person that if you really wanted more information, I will be happy to hook you up. She has offered to answer questions or just be there if somebody is really trying to determine if this is a right step for them. It's not a medical diagnosis. She's not a doctor, although she were a registered nurse. So close enough.
Luckily, yeah,
Yeah.
it comes in handy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do believe in sharing this kind of information with one another about steps we're taking to gain better health. It's kind of like I see it on TikTok all the time where people are crowdsourcing and self-experimenting to get to a place of better health because we do know our bodies best. We do know what we should do next. So thank you, Michelle, for telling the story. It was amazing to talk with you again.
It was great to talk to you, and thanks for having me on.